Well, it's been an interesting 2020 and continuing our review of various sectors of the Nigerian state. We want to take a look at what the economy has been in the year 2020. Two gentlemen joined us this morning to look at the issues. Professor Oyebanji Oyelaran Oyeinka is the SSA on industrialization to the president of the Africa Development Bank, as well as Marcel Okeke, who is an economist. Both men join us virtually from Ibadan and Lekki, respectively. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Prof, I'd like to begin with you. You had this, let me begin with your organization, of course. You had this outlook over the year, over 2020, and then the real GDP growth was projected to rise to 2.9% in 2020 and 3.3% in 2021. But then in the wake of COVID-19, you came up with a supplementary document that said that Nigeria was likely to go minus 4.4. And then, of course, that information also came. Would you say that, what's your take on both the projections and the realities that eventually came up?
Thank you so much for inviting me. What we had was a projection. What the reality is what COVID brought to us. COVID, as long as COVID is there, we are going to be having challenges. What actually happened, as you all know very well, is that in the second and third quarter, Nigeria had a decline of close to 3.6, which is close to the 4% that was projected. In other words, GDP declined by 1 trillion second quarter and 670 billion in the third quarter, respectively. This is huge. This happened because of the drop in oil prices. Remember, we lost 60% of the price of oil, and by April, actually, as I jokingly told someone, the price of oil was close to that of a cup of coffee. So this was a huge one. In fact, the drop in second quarter alone is probably equal to the economies of some countries. Sierra Leone, Gambia, and all that. So this wasn't a small thing. There were projections all around those 4%, and I think this is fairly correct. What we had, but the more important issue actually is also the health crisis that we had, and which continues to impact on the economic crisis. Economic continues to weaken, and leading also, of course, to other social crises, such as food shortage, decreased government revenue. Plans have been thrown totally out of the window. So it's a global crisis, as the CBN governor was saying in that news right now. All countries have been impacted. There are very severe consequences of this particular COVID and the subsequent economic crisis. Before COVID, we were projecting that close to 4% of Nigerians were living below the national poverty line, according to the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. More Nigerians are going to go under. In fact, the projection is that there will be another 20 million people by 2022 if current trend continues. So our role now as a country and leadership is to find mitigating measures to ensure that this doesn't happen to us. The worrying part, actually, for me, is the accompanying food insecurity that has attended to all of this. You know what has happened in the northwest and the northeastern part of Nigeria has added, actually. So the crisis we all face in 2020 wasn't just about, for Nigeria, is a trinity of evil. There was the COVID crisis, they followed the economic crisis, and of course also the insecurity crisis that we are experiencing. So we will need all that we could muster to ensure that Nigerians are taken out of all this and go back fast into recovery as quickly as possible.
Well, Mr. Okeke, how do you open on this matter? Well, minus 4.4 was projected, but minus 3.6 was what we had. Could it have been better, or could it have been avoided? It's okay, that's for you.
Is that my question?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me on. It couldn't have been avoided because, like my colleague had just said, the coronavirus pandemic was and still is a global issue, a global health and economic challenge. Nigeria could not and cannot and is not immune to its impact. Export product of Nigeria, which is oil, once it hit the price of oil, it has hit the economy of the country, right at the head. And so once the price of oil crashed, it's like the entire economy crashed. And then with other, concomitant effects of collapse in price of oil, because when price of oil collapses, it's like the entire economy of Nigeria has collapsed. And so there was no way it could have been avoided. But having said that, if Nigeria had, in the past, been saving for the rainy day, assuming we have been investing our, oil money prudently over the past, decades, maybe the impact would have been somehow attenuated, reduced rather than what we are having now. But because over the years we have been so not frugal, but we have been so I don't know, just spending money anyhow, and maybe in line with our constitution, we say that whatever we realize from oil must be shared. And we kept sharing and sharing and sharing. And that kind of consumption, which makes our economy so much import dependent. So once the price of oil crashes, and because we have no buffer, nothing is saved, we now have to experience the full impact, the full negative impact of the collapse of the price of oil that came with, the coronavirus pandemic around this time last year. So the pandemic is with us for 1 year, and rather than giving up, we are now, hearing terrible stories. So it couldn't have been avoided. Let me put it that way. Thank you.
Well, Professor Oyinka, let me ask you. Now, today the dailies are quoting IMF that poverty rising to 63% in Nigeria as a result of COVID. But you did mention in passing how we've seen food shortage affecting several other things. Now, from what you've seen, the kind of efforts that were put in place, are we doing the right things to address those attendance challenges, as it were?
Well, government has taken some measures, and we were one of the first actually to, identify this COVID. Nigeria was one of the first to actually lock down and taking certain measures. But as Mr. Okeke said, the point is you are who you are. You can only give what you have. Nigerians' economy and assets have been so constrained by our historical dependence on oil. What we have done at the fiscal level and other options is, try to manage the COVID issue, try to do a number of macroeconomic management issues to continue to keep what we have, which is really little, reprioritizing public expenditure to protect what we have. What I will say to answer your question directly is it's a historical issue. I think Nigeria has punched below its weight over a long period of time. The dependence on oil has been a disaster for Nigeria. Let's just put it very bluntly. And this speaks to the issue of how we view ourselves. Nigeria needs to diversify very fast, Nigeria will need to achieve double-digit growth. It's almost like a fairy tale if you look at where we are now. But I don't see anything impossible. If we continue this way, if we get a little relief after COVID, and we continue on this path of simply just depending on oil, we're going to, the 60% poverty basket that you mentioned is real. As a matter of fact, the data that we have is that by 2030, 50% of all the poorest people in the world, will be in only 3 countries in Africa: Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Democratic of Congo. This is really a disgrace, looking at the assets we have. And inequality is also widening. In fact, the most frightening part of poverty is the widening inequality, where people perceive themselves as marginalized in a society where they see, swimming in an ocean of wealth, as it were. We have rich agricultural wealth, we have rich mineral wealth, but yet we persist in simply just relying on one commodity. Nigeria has been a mono-commodity economy for too long. And everyone comes and say, "Oh, we're going to diversify." All we do is talk. And I think we really need to speak to ourselves very clearly. I agree with my colleague that yes, the corona pandemic was something that was unavoidable, and in some way we escaped the huge part of it. When you in comparative terms with what's happening in Europe and America and all other places now. But we cannot ride our luck. What we see with the young people recently is a signal to us that we're also living above our means. When you look at the capital expenditure compared with the recurrent for this year, for example, we are back to spend over 40% on recurrent expenditure and borrowing almost around the same amount of money. So Nigeria is living above its means, basically. We've lived above our means for so long. Governance is too expensive. The kinds of ways that we are the leadership in our country, we live our lives, is too much compared with when you look at the kind of poverty you see on the street in Nigeria. So you ask me, have we done enough? I think we need to do more. We need to do more in terms of showing leadership, prudence. We need to do more in diversifying the economy of Nigeria. We need to do more in exploiting those potentials of our people. As my boss, Dr. Adeshina, always says, that nobody is potential. You can talk potential all you want. Nobody is potential. Nobody can drink oil. You have to convert that oil revenue into something practical. Infrastructure, to social services, health, education, for people to appreciate. So, yes, we have probably escaped the worst of the pandemic, but we are getting the results in terms of rising poverty, rising inequality, and the degradation of the quality of life of Nigerians. It's going to be a challenging year, challenging set of years for us ahead, unless we diversify the Nigerian economy.
Well, Mr. Okeke, I'd like you to follow up on this, but from this angle. If we do not, first of all, what do we have to do? And what is the consequence if we do not take those actions urgently?
Thank you very much. My colleague that has just spoken, said a lot of relevant things. We must be talking about diversification of the economy, but I want to qualify to say effective diversification of the economy. I use effective because successive governments over the years has been a same song of diversification, and each one claims to be diversifying the economy. But effective diversification, would have happened only when you diversify and have a lot to export, to add to our foreign exchange inflow, augment, or in fact, displace oil
Just one
as a
moment.
major,
This is something that we have been talking about for a long time, just as you said, and
that is why
Prof
I'm
has also.
qualified it.
Well, just one moment. What are this? Let's be, if we can hazard some specifics. For instance, we have been talking about, focusing on agriculture for as far back as I can remember, since I was in secondary school. Now, so many people would look at that and say, okay, successive governments since the Second Republic have been making efforts to focus on agriculture, for instance, because we see what agriculture did for us in the First Republic. Now, what are the inhibitions for the Second Republic and the Third Republic and the Fourth Republic that we're in now, that's going into its 21st year, already in its 21st year? What are those things that have inhibited us from effectively, to use your word, diversifying into agriculture, improving our production and productivity capacity?
Again, thank you very much. The kind of agriculture you are talking about is the one that contributes a lot to GDP. But when it comes to money, producing something to export, to earn foreign exchange, to help oil, we have problem. Because what we are talking about, and we are talking about, is like the subsistence farming. Because of our land use decree or act, people who want to farm, for example, don't have large expanse of land to farm. You have storage facility challenge, so that even those who farm on commercial, scale, have problem with how and where to store. We don't have any arrangement in place, for value addition, so that if you produce your cassava, how will it be utilized here? How will it be improved upon so that it becomes exportable, not in raw form? If you produce your palm kernel, how will it be, processed so that there will be value addition and it becomes exportable? If you produce your cocoa, how do you add value? How do you improve it instead of exporting raw cocoa? All these have to be done on commercial scale. So we're talking about commercial farming, so that people come into it and mean business rather than just survival. As it is now over the years, what we are seeing is subsistence farming and a lot of constraints, because government is not giving the necessary incentive or encouragement, to people who are there. Because of the oil economy and oil culture we have, we all are soaked. In quote, we all are soaked into the oil mindset, because that is where any and everybody can make easy money. Because when you go into agriculture, there are all kinds of hazards, and government has not done much, to handle these hazards, and so on and so forth. So that is why you have not gotten the expected result. But we have been pushed into a very tight corner, and that is why we are still talking about this effective diversification. And until and unless that is done, we are still going to have this kind of challenge. If you look back in the 60s and even 50s, where we have diversification in this area of agriculture, you have cocoa, you have palm oil, you have granite pyramid, you have rubber, you have cotton, and so on and so forth. So, and all these things were being exported. So any one of them that has any challenge in the global market, the other one will do well. And when you net off, you see that the economy is still doing well, because of the variety of things being exported. But this time, all those things kind of fizzle out. Where is the granite pyramid? Where is the cocoa and cocoa house and cocoa everything? Where is the palm oil plantation? Where is the rubber plantation? Where is the cotton plantation? And so on and so forth. Like my colleague said, we have all kinds of solid minerals. Why are they not being mined? Why are they not being, you have gold somewhere? Why are we not going into it? So we make a lot of money, and we mean it seriously, not lip service, as is currently the case. I'm sorry to say that. And so on and so on. So there's a lot we can do and change our situation. Thank you.
Well, Prof, if those stats don't give us a wake-up call or give our leaders a wake-up call, I wonder what will. Because if by 2030, 50% of the world's poorest people will be found in countries including Nigeria, well, that could only mean that, look, no matter how much they try to keep the people down or prevent anything from happening, you will always have people who will hit the streets. If people are hungry, there's no stopping to what they will want to do to get themselves going. Now, after is going to kick on very soon. Manufacturers have highlighted what they want to see the authorities do so that we're not on the back foot. Who knows if we will put some of those things in place. What do we need to be doing now to ensure that we are not on the back foot eventually when these things start?
So let me follow up a little bit on the some granular details of this issue of diversification in answer to your question. For example, Mr. Kwike talked about agriculture and our fixation or our being stuck on subsistence farming. It is the truth. And this is one of the reasons why the bank, for example, we've been promoting the special agro-industrial processing zones. No country is doing subsistence and gets rich. It's not possible. Subsistence simply means you subsist on certain things. You live, you eat, you die. No surplus to sell locally, no surplus to sell globally. So this is the problem, why we are. And the danger with those also, by the way, after independence, Nigeria was quite self-sufficient in food. And we had almost 60% of our employment actually was on export of crops. As my colleague was saying, groundnut, cocoa, and all of that. All countries started from that level, but no one stays on that level. You have to move forward. You move forward, first of all, by specializing in certain value addition. If you were producing raw cocoa, you move into producing, say, cocoa butter, into producing, say, chocolate. If you were producing cassava, you move away from just simply producing cassava to producing foods made from cassava. Flour milling, for example, is one of the biggest business in Nigeria, but we still don't have enough. You have Nigeria still importing close to, I think, 3 billion worth of wheat. We import all manner of things that can grow anywhere. So the first thing is that we should produce enough. Africa on aggregate imports almost $60 billion of food, things that we eat. Yet we have 65% of all arable land in the world. And of course, Nigeria has a big chunk of that. So if all we do in the next 5 years is ensure that we don't import anything to eat anymore, we'll have gone a long way to solve the issue of food security. And they say once you feed somebody, you remove anger from their lives. The second level, of course, is now to convert those raw agricultural products into exportable high-value products. Nigeria still import starch, industrial starch, all manner of starch. We import all manner of things that could be made locally. So let us, first of all, add value to agricultural products. And then, of course, we then move into other, what you might call product diversification from other, other raw material or minerals or whatever it is. Let me give an example. In the early 60s, 70s, South Korea started with, simply just doing cotton, textile, and so forth.
Pardon me, please, but we need to go to break. But we'll come back and allow you to continue on that train of thought. Just stay with us. All right, welcome back, Prof. Could you go ahead, please? They appear as though you were talking about the low-hanging fruits that we could easily just highlight and do as soon as possible. Go ahead, Prof. That's where you continue your line of thought, please.
So thank you so much. So I was saying that over time, what others have done is basically to move progressively into higher value added, more complex products. And you look at all the Asian countries, they did exactly the same thing. Started with textile, from cotton into garment. And I remember Nigerians used to rush over to Korea, sewing suits and so forth, where we have cotton. We are the producers of cotton. Then they moved into basic consumer goods, into computer accessories. They move into semiconductor. They move into cars. So this is the progression into value, into diversification. And of course, you widen your market. So you have both product diversification and you have export and market diversification. This was what my colleague Mr. Okeke was saying. You have to go away, move away from your comfort zone. And it's not easy. You have to learn to produce it. You have to invest in it. You have to invest in infrastructure. What is Nigeria, for example, doing, importing almost 90% of its drugs? You go to the market today, you find almost 500 types of malaria drugs. What's Nigeria doing? Producing Bangladesh, India. By the way, Bangladesh produces almost 70% or 80% of its drugs now. So it's not rocket science. It's not even as rich a country as
If I can
India.
quickly follow up on that,
So what
Prof.
we are saying is that...
Just one moment, Prof, if I can quickly follow up on that. So let's talk about the real issues here. You have highlighted the things that we can easily do. And as you have also highlighted, and Mr. Okeke as well, a good number of all these things have been known to us. In terms of infrastructure, in terms of capacity, in terms of funding, what is missing? Is it the system? Is it the structure? Is it the process? What exactly is it that we are missing that hasn't allowed us to do the needful so that we can maximize this potential that, as you said, we can't take to the market?
Do I take it?
No. That's for Prof.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So I missed a bit of, but what I'm, what are we missing?
Yes.
I think our problem is systemic. First of all, you have to put out a vision. Nigeria has put out a vision several times. But who executes the vision? You need a competent bureaucracy, a non-corrupt bureaucracy. And systemically, I think we are missing that. Let's face the fact. People don't want to talk about these things, but we need to talk about it. We should look at ourselves in the mirror and talk about them. Number 3 is the technical aspects. Those who run industry, they need infrastructure. We haven't invested enough in infrastructure, and that's also a direct impact of the bureaucratic problem that we have in Nigeria. When someone comes to this country and they want to invest, they face all manner of human barriers. The barriers people face is not so much knowledge. There are a lot of brilliant Nigerians all over the place. You walk into a ministry and people are asking you to run around all over. They take their money and they go. Look, today, if we fix our governance problem, so much money will pour into this country. This is the truth. And so it's a systemic issue that we always try to avoid not talking about, but if we really love ourselves, we should talk about them. So that's part of it. We missed hugely in terms of the basic foundations of industrial infrastructure. The steel industry, the chemical, the petrochemical industry, and all that. My very first year in the university in Ife was the first time I heard about when you have oil, you have the basis for a complex chemical and petrochemical industry. And anyone who is a few years old, you will know that that's where we started from. The refinery, for example, is just a small part of the chemical complex. You can produce virtually anything, plastics, carbon, all kinds of things, which we have missed because we mismanage all of them. Look around you. What can you find today? Nothing. Nothing to show for almost 60 years of all the oil revenue. So at the base of everything is the leadership issue. And I'm not talking of maybe a president or whatever. It's at all levels, including the private sector. You see, when people talk about leadership, they also say, oh, maybe it's the president or something. No, it's not. It's all of us. All of us. A director, a deputy director in the ministry, whoever you are, that you are making sure an investment doesn't happen, you are just as guilty as a politician. And this is the truth that we must face. So, yes, look at which infrastructure do we have? You can't drive on roads. A friend was coming to visit me the other day from Abeokuta to Ibadan. Here they spent almost 3-4 hours. You are coming from Lagos, Ibadan. That used to take us 50 minutes in those days. Now, you don't know when you're going to get here. And Nigeria is now having a rail from Ibadan to Lagos, and we are celebrating a party. And when others are making bullet trains, are moving to the next level technologies. So I think we really need to reflect very clearly on our failure so that we can begin to configure the future properly. This is the truth. The infrastructure is not there. The governance system is missing. The leadership to actually inspire people to invest in our country. Even Nigerians don't invest here. They take the money and go take it somewhere else. Where do you find urban water today? Nobody. There's no urban water. I live in Abidjan. I don't have borehole. Electricity never disappears anytime. So this is the crux of the problem.
All right. Well, Prof, let me ask Dr. Keke about this one as well. The crucial issue of systems that you have talked about. Dr. Keke, so how do you react to this? And I'd like you to take you back in history. You would remember that in 1972, the government of Yakubu Gowon at the time set up a committee headed by Chief Jerome Udoji, to review the entire civil service structure to make it efficient at the time. Just one of the several recommendations was salary increase. One of the most important things there was to make sure that it was an efficient civil service so that it could last a lifetime, create an ombudsman and so many other things like that. That perhaps was about the only time we've ever really tried to rejig or tinker with the machinery of government, which is the civil service. If you are to take an assessment, how serious is that? Are you in line with what Prof has said, or you differ a bit? And what do we need to do to make sure that that machine, that engine of the face of government that we see is as effective as it ought to be so that we can maximize all potential?
And thank you very much again for this question. I agree in total with what my colleague Prof has said. But let me also add this. You are talking about the civil service. They are called civil servants or public, anyway, civil servants. But the thing that we coordinate or connect, all we have been saying, is what is called political will. It is what is called political will. So in the past 20 to 21 years now, we have been in a democratic setting. So the politicians are in charge. The politicians are in charge. We have had one president served and gone, another one taken over, and blah, blah, blah. You know, what has changed, like you have asked? So the politicians are in charge. If you come to a ministry, for instance, the minister is a chief executive officer. The palm selects and others below him or her are civil servants. You understand? And so they take order from that politician, that is the CEO. And that now dovetails into what my colleague has said about leadership. When we talk about the lack of leadership or failure of leadership, we are not talking about the president or presidency. We are talking about leadership at all levels, you know. But because the system is corrupt, like he also said, it's like every person is feathering his or her own nest to the detriment of the economy or Nigeria as an entity. And that's what has been happening. Okay, but the other issue, the other straw that appears to be breaking the camel's back when it comes to this issue of economy is this level of insecurity in the land. Like he has said, Nigerians no longer feel comfortable investing here. Who will feel comfortable investing here when there's life and property is not secured? One has to be alive, you know, to talk about investment. But it's like that life is no longer guaranteed. So why will you be in an environment where your life, the safety of your life and property is not guaranteed? That's the challenge we face now. And so when you handle the issue of political will and handle the issue of insecurity, and there is security in the land and safety, and people can move around freely and easily, then we start talking about the issue of infrastructure. Because even the infrastructure you're talking about are endangered. The hooligans are going around vandalizing. You are not hearing vandalism. The entire oil infrastructure, telecom infrastructure, and so on and so forth are being vandalized. Yes, it has come to that level, so that the little we have are being vandalized because of the hopelessness of unemployment, and social challenges or socio-economic challenges we are having. All these things have to work together. And, before we start the journey to our El Dorado or even the promised land. But these things are not there. The political will in particular is not there. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Marcel Okeke and Professor Oyebanji Oyelaran Oyeyinka. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us today on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So we'll be turning our attention now to an equally important arm of government, the judiciary. So as we review that, we'll take a look at what challenges, what have we done wrong, how do we correct it, where are we in this scheme of things. That's coming up in a moment.